We're going to the nation's capital, 980 ESPN. Chris Cooley, former Redskin, and now one of the hosts of the shows down there on 980 ESPN is, of course, the defending NFC East champs. And I don't know, Chris, how surprising is it to hear that? Was it a surprise when they won the division for you last year? Was it a surprise that they were the team on top of the NFC East?
First of all, Mike and Pete, what's up, boys? Thank you for having me on. And yeah,
Captain Chaos.
It was a surprise to everybody in D.C. that the Redskins won the NFC East. If you went into last year, a lot of the predictions were best case 7-9, could get it to 8-8. That'd be incredible. But most were in the 6-10 and lower range. And you looked at Kirk Cousins in his first year as a starter with all the drama in RG3 and his team with a subpar defense and said no chance. Man, they learned how to play in tight games. I think they learned how to finally feel what it is to win. I don't really know what that is, to be honest with you, because I didn't do it that much here. But it seems like this team kind of got excited about it. And look, they're in another spot right now.
Yeah, and is that spot the favorite? Does it feel like they're the favorite?
Well, it's not Philly. We can start with that right away. No, I'm just kidding.
The fan, you mean you're talking about the fan base,
right?
I get that. The fan base is not as demanding.
The Eagles clearly are not the favorite. Although I actually do like that roster a lot. I'm excited about them. Yeah, you would say Dallas is a very talented roster, but with Dak Prescott at quarterback, you question can they win, because with the backup last year, they weren't capable of winning games. And then I think you look at New York and say, under Ben McAdoo as a new head coach, can they take some of these free agency acquisitions and gel as a defense? I like Peyton Manning in New York. I like Odell. I'm not sure they're going to run it. I'm just not sure what you're going to get. Very few teams win in free agency and then win in the season, or have a big spending free agency and win the season. Denver did it a couple years ago, get to the Super Bowl last year, but it's not that common. And so when I look at the consistency, I think it's pretty incredible that maybe for the first time in a long time, you say Washington is the favorite to win the NFC East.
Chris Cooley's with us, 980 ESPN in Washington. Of course, the Redskins coming off an NFC East championship. I think this division clearly up for grabs, but I don't know. Is this all, to you, Chris, predicated on which Kirk Cousins shows up this year? I mean, if he's the guy last year, they win this division. If he's not the guy he was last year, it's up for grabs?
See, I think this ends up being what you probably call a breakout year for Kirk Cousins, because
oh boy,
I watch. Well, for me it would have been last year, but I watch a lot of film and I watch the guy play a bunch, and I've watched him through this preseason and the way he's thrown. To me, it's not a which Kirk Cousins, and so when I say breakout year, it becomes that year where it's understood that it's not a flukish type of year. He's not a flukish player. He's not a check down guy that got lucky for 1 year and didn't throw interceptions. He's a smart quarterback that's able to really pick up the back end of the defenses, really understand coverage immediately. In this variation of West Coast offense, he's able to cut the field in half very fast and analyze exactly where he wants to go with the ball. And to me, there's no two Kirk Cousins. I really see this as a pretty consistent football player, and he's got a lot of weapons around him. When you look at the ability to throw the ball to Deshaun Jackson, to Jordan Reed, who I think is as good as anybody in the league at tight end, and that's Gronk included, and Gronk's not even healthy right now. Jamison Crowder, Pierre Garçon, Josh Doxson, the first-round pick, should play this week and should be a pretty good player for them. There's a lot of talent for Kirk Cousins to distribute the ball to, so I think he'll be fine. Really, this season and this team winning will be predicated on, can they stop anybody? Can they stop the run up front? There's real questions defensively.
We're talking with Chris Cooley, Captain Chaos, if you will. He's co-host of Cooley and Kevin on ESPN 980 in Washington, D.C. with Kevin Sheenan. And, Chris, you mentioned our old buddy Deshaun Jackson. Do you see him as having a breakout year this year?
Yeah, and it's one of those deals where it's a contract year. And so you say, wow, he's got himself ready to play. He's put on 10 pounds. He's gained all this muscle, and he's looked as good as anybody in camp. When you talk to this coaching staff, they're more impressed by Deshaun Jackson really than anybody for the first 6 weeks of training camp and the early part of the season. Yeah, if he stays healthy, he is a really talented player. And I think Kirk Cousins actually said this yesterday. He said when Deshaun wants to be elite, he's elite. So when Deshaun wants to be elite, he's an incredible player in this league. And I don't know, you guys watch him a bunch. I think he gets categorized as kind of a one-trick pony guy, just a deep threat. I think he's pretty versatile underneath, and I think he's pretty good with the ball in his hands. To me, it ends up being a pretty big year for Deshaun as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, he's a guy, I think, real quick, in Philly, I think it was one of those things. When he was good, he was really good, and when he wasn't, he was really frustrating, and it seems like that has kind of carried out to you guys as well.
And I think it carries out really to the entire team is when you're phenomenal, we'll accept anyone you want to be, however you want to act. Look, I'm not in that locker room, so I can't really speak for that. But when he's good, he dictates coverage. He's one of maybe 15 receivers in this league that are able to really make coaches' game plan in the back end and open other players up. And on top of that, even if he does, he's still able to go up and get a ball. There's some special attributes to Deshaun Jackson. And when he wants to be elite, he really is elite.
Chris, I wanted to get into a guy you mentioned a minute ago, and that's Jordan Reed. How much of Jordan Reed's success last season was because Deshaun went down and Kirk had to go somewhere with the football and he found Jordan Reed, or how much of it is an indication in the growth of Jordan Reed and how far he's come?
I think it's all how far Jordan Reed's come, and I think a lot of that also has to do with his mental toughness, his ability to keep himself on the field. He really saw change in him last year, and then talking to him a bunch as a tight end there and understanding where he's coming from. The first couple of years, he almost had to choose to be on the field. It's almost that injury versus pain situation. And last year he said, I have to find a way. And although he missed 2 games, he still had 87 catches. When I watch him play, I'm just so impressed as a route runner. He is as fluid as it gets. He's extremely patient. And he's got at the top of a route stem what looks like the nastiest basketball crossover you've ever seen for a double stick separating type of route. And you guys saw it up in Philly. Every team that plays him sees it. They try to cover him with linebackers. It doesn't work. You try to cover him with safeties. He makes them silly. And people put cornerbacks on him, and he still separates and is able to win. And there's so few tight ends in the history of this league that have been able to do that. That you just say, wow, he is really, really a special player. If he could block a little bit more, then wow, we'd be talking all the time.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to watch, and that offense very good. You mentioned the defense. I want to get your opinion because a lot of people feel that Norman might not fit. That he was a product of that scheme in Carolina. What do you think?
So I think it's an interesting question, but in that scheme in Carolina where they're playing a lot of cover 3, and he's playing the third of the field, he's not just playing a spot drop zone where he's covering the third of the field. He's man matching. He's man matching the lead receiver a lot of times in that third. So when you say it's all zone, it doesn't mean that he's not playing a man-to-man concept within his own zone. He's got some to prove here, I think, and he's one of those interesting situations where he didn't want to leave Carolina. He wanted to stay there and be a part of that team, and it wasn't what worked out for him. The one thing I hear from everybody out there and all the players that I know is no one works harder than Josh Norman. No one has more to say than Josh Norman either, but no one works harder than Josh Norman, and so it should be fun. It'll be an interesting year. But he's one of those guys to me that he's got to come out and do something early and not get beat early for this fan base to really stick with him. And then you're talking a fan base in D.C., guys, that has watched free agent bust after free agent bust and big names and big money over and over again and kind of the same routine. I really don't think he's that type of player. I think he's a guy that's going to end up being fantastic, playing a lot of the same type of stuff that he did in Carolina. But, man, when you start talking and saying that you're the best cornerback on earth and everything else that went into it, that he couldn't wait to play Sam Bradford twice a year, you better play well. You really better play well. It's bad optics if you don't.
We're talking with former Washington Redskins tight end Chris Cooley, now on ESPN 980 in Washington. And, Chris, how about the running game for the Redskins? I know they're a little banged up at that position right now, including Chris Thompson. Who carries the football for him, and who's the breakout at running back for the Redskins this year in your mind?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a breakout at running back for the Redskins this year, and that's one of the issues of this offense. But that from last year being an issue and them being almost worse in the league didn't seem to impact the fact that they could still move the ball down the field. I don't know how much Jay Gruden and Sean McVay, our offensive coordinator, care that they get huge yards or have huge average running the ball. They don't want to take a bunch of negative plays, and they don't want a bunch of 2nd and 10 situations. But they're setting up play-action shots. They're setting up boot shots, and so they have to some extent, show run, and they have to continue to remain resilient with the fact that they are going to run the ball in 1st and 2nd down situations. That said, I don't think they have to be that successful, and I don't think they will be that successful in the run game unless you have some kind of breakout year from a guy like Matt Jones. But Matt Jones has been hurt throughout his career. He was hurt all his preseason. And our second back, Matt Jones, Chris Thompson's your 3rd down back. Our second back is a guy named Robert Kelly, who is an undrafted free agent out of Tulane this year, rookie. And he looked great in the preseason. But it's interesting because that's actually a competition. It's going to week 1, I think, with the running back by committee, who gets the bulk of the carries. So you're looking at potentially an undrafted free agent rookie getting a lot of carries up in D.C. And so I don't know if you can really hang your hat on the fact that they're going to run the ball effectively.
We'll see how the Redskins play with expectations. They open up against the Steelers. And, of course, 97.3 ESPN's look at the NFC East. Chris Cooley, 980 ESPN in the nation's capital, the defending NFC East champs. I haven't heard that in a long time. Sports, especially in the 2000s. Very frequently in the 80s and 90s, but not so much in the 2000s. Chris, we do appreciate the time as always, pal.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.